Hello everyone, I'm Gareth Johnstone, I'm the Director General of WorldFish. I'd like to thank you all for joining our virtual workshop on alternative seafoods. Our mission at WorldFish is to make fish and aquatic foods an integral part of the global food system's transformation towards healthy and sustainable diets for people and the planet. When we say aquatic foods, we mean animals and plants that are farmed and harvested from water, as well as alternative products emerging from new food technologies, including plant and cell-based seafood. This is an exciting new frontier for the future of food. Now, what we want to accomplish with this workshop is to source your ideas for research on alternative seafood technologies and the related market and policy issues to enable their adoption. We hope to build a global coalition of stakeholders across the research, public and private sector to work together on these issues. You know, WorldFish has been a pioneer research organisation that sets the future agenda. When we started 45 years ago, aquaculture was still emerging, and our innovations in tilapia have helped to grow the sector globally and particularly in emerging economies. We have an opportunity to do the same with innovations in alternative seafoods. That's why we've convened this workshop to explore with you options to co-design future initiatives that support the development of the alternative seafood sector. Now, shaping a strong research agenda requires diverse ideas and strong partnership for success. I really value your proactive participation in the up-and-coming workshop. Thank you in advance for your time, your ideas and your collaboration with us, and I wish you a great workshop. Thank you very much.
Welcome everyone to my presentation on seafoods in Bangladesh. I am Qazi Ahmed Kabir, working as a fish feeds and nutrition lead in WorldFish Bangladesh Program Office. Seafoods in Bangladesh play a key role. Bangladesh is a country in South Asia, a lower middle income country with a very big population, 160 million people in a very small country. In this country, fish plays a strong role in the livelihoods of people, providing 11% of people's livelihood. And 25% of agricultural GDP still comes from aquaculture and fisheries. Also, 60% or more than 60% of animal protein is still coming from fish source. Fish plays a strong role in the export earning of the country. It's the second important commodity exported from Bangladesh. Per capita fish consumption in Bangladesh is 63 grams per day, which indicates its role in human nutrition, and the total fish produced here is more than 4.5 million metric tons. Bangladesh has gifted with huge resources, water resources, which is now playing key role for increasing the fish and seafood system of Bangladesh, aquaculture and then inland capture and marine fisheries all together producing more than 4.5 million metric ton fish, and it's unique in a sense that this country, both aquaculture and capture fisheries are growing, and the growth rate of overall fish production continues for last 10 years. If we look at the models of fish production, both from aquaculture and capture, there are several models, but all indicates a same trend that it will continue to grow in Bangladesh until 2030. There is fluctuation in the level of projection, and some probably is a bit overestimated, but it's going to grow. The major challenge for Bangladesh aquaculture and fisheries, one of the important thing is fisheries resource management. We have huge inland and marine water bodies. At some stage in Bangladesh, the capture fisheries was going down, which is now again growing, and it made an example that with good governance, with good management practice, we can contribute the increase of fish coming from capture fisheries. If we look at the area allocated for inland aquaculture and the overall production, we can see that the productivity is still at the lower margin of the carrying capacity, and there is plenty of opportunity to increase the productivity from inland aquaculture as well as to increase efficiency from this system. Food safety is one of the most critical thing at this moment in Bangladesh because of the industrial growth, because of so much use of agrochemicals. So the water bodies are receiving all the runoff, and it's the increase of human health coming through the food, fish foods is increasing. So we need to look at the way how we can produce safe food, also how we can improve the post harvest and this processing, so after harvesting people still get fresh and safe food. Climate change is one of the important parameter for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is one of the country likely to be highly impacted by climate change, and the salinity intrusion, sea level rise, temperature increase. It provides some newer opportunity for fisheries and aquaculture. At the same time, it will change the current dynamics of fish production. So that's something we need to address, and the market system needs to be inclusive of smallholders, and that's a big challenge.
My name is Rose Basita. I'm a scientist based in Lusaka, Zambia office for WorldFish. I'm going to speak to you about the role of aquatic foods in the country. Zambia is a landlocked developing country located in the southern part of Africa with an increasing population estimated presently at about 18 million people. Aquatic foods play an important role among Zambians, and they mainly come from capture fisheries that produces up to 80,800 metric tons, and from aquaculture we get about 32,888 metric tons, according to the recent Department of Fisheries report. When we talk about aquatic food in Zambia, it's mainly implies fish, and in some cases there are freshwater crustaceans and reptiles that are also grown, for instance the crocodiles. At the national level, fisheries contributes 3.2% to the overall GDP, and at household level we see fish contributing up to 40% to the overall animal protein intake. Over 12,000 households are engaged in aquaculture, and rural Zambians along the rivers and lakes fully depend on fisheries for their livelihoods. Recent statistics also show that up to 1 million people depend on fisheries and aquaculture for income, employment, food, and nutrition security. Women play a great role in production, post-harvest and marketing sector of the fisheries industry. Sustainable use of aquatic resources is thus vital, given that fisheries are important to the vulnerable groups of people, especially infants, women, children, youth, and the elderly. The fisheries sector has encountered a number of challenges, and from an aquaculture perspective, given the industry is growing, feed availability, quality, quantity, accessibility of feed has been an issue, and seed quality and quantity still remain major challenges for the growing aquaculture industry. Markets and marketing, fish health and disease are also part of the challenges facing the aquaculture industries. Capture fisheries, on the other hand, has been impacted largely by the unsustainable harvesting methods. Non-selective fishing methods and gears have been used to harvest indiscriminately fish of various sizes and species that are many times not intended by the fishers. For example, the use of mosquito nets, poisoning that has been recorded on various lakes and rivers in Zambia. These generally have led to a decrease in species diversity, a decrease in production, nursing grounds have been degraded, and overall environmental degradation has become a great concern. Climate change presents a new challenge as well as opportunity. For instance, in the capture fisheries, along the floodplains of, for example, Bangwelo, the Barosi floodplains that harbor seasonal fisheries, they are impacted by changes in climate. For instance, prolonged droughts directly affect breeding and spawning season of, for instance, catfishes that usually characterize these seasonal fisheries. Consequently, it has adverse effects to the communities that directly depend on these fisheries for a livelihood, right from food, nutrition, and income security. Post-harvest losses have continued to be a hindrance in capture fisheries. For instance, the carpenter, which is the small silver fish industry in Zambia, processing and product quality remain wanting given the processing methods used. For instance, the photo on my right shows how the carpenter is dried. This photo was taken in Zambia. It's literally laid in the bare ground or sand on the ground on nets, and improved processing technologies would be vital in harnessing the production and products from these important fisheries to the community. Food is therefore, aquatic food is that wasted and spoiled that would otherwise come to improve the nutrition and food security of the vulnerable populations that need it most. Food safety and hygiene remain a key challenge. Amidst all these challenges, demand for aquatic food will continue to increase. A recent Foresight analysis done by WorldFish shows that demand is being driven by population growth, income growth, diet transformation towards more animal-based protein, particularly fish, among the urban dwellers. Projections have been made based on various scenarios, using 2014 as a baseline year and projected to 2030. We still see a deficit that is currently being met by imports. However, considering as other scenarios like increased aquaculture production, improved fisheries management, and further integrated approaches that would ensure increased production and utilization of aquatic food would be useful to ensure that diverse, affordable, and accessible aquatic food resources are available to those that need it most. Thank you for listening, and thanks to my colleagues that contributed to this presentation in various ways.
Hi there, I'm Misha Maraha, and I'm part of the team researching alternative seafood here at WorldFish as part of the foundational work for developing the new aquatic foods research program. We define alternative seafood as all plant-based, fermentation-derived, and cell-based seafood alternatives that mimic the taste, texture, appearance, and/or nutritional properties of conventional seafood. Alternative seafood is an emerging sector with the potential to help meet the growing seafood demand. This emergence could complement existing strategies in fisheries management and sustainable aquaculture, or be disruptive to the seafood industry globally. Our goal is really to better understand its potential for the impact on the many people worldwide who depend on seafood for their nutrition and/or livelihoods. This research is based on a review of scientific literature and mass media, interactions with alternative seafood stakeholders and development experts, and a future scenarios modeling effort. The following two presentations will be given by researchers at the International Food Policy Research Institute and from researchers at WorldFish to detail these modeling efforts and their findings to date. Thank you.
Hello, good day. My name is Tim Sulzer. I'm a senior scientist at the International Food Policy Research Institute based in Washington, D.C. I'm here to talk to you about Exploring Food System Innovation Scenarios with IFPRI's Impact Model. The International Model for Policy Analysis of Agricultural Commodities and Trade, that is IMPACT, at its core is a partial equilibrium, multi-market agricultural sector model of the globe. We are connected with microscale climate, water, and crop models. We work across a very refined geography, the details of which you see here. We end up with 320 what we call food production units at the subnational scale. We do projections out to 2050, and we include, among many other things, estimates of production, consumption, the number of people facing hunger, and environmental impacts. One example of what we produce that inform our policy discussions, among many other things, are the changing composition of diets in terms of per capita kilocalorie availability across different types of foods. Here we see across the different regions projections out to 2050 for the different types of foods, cereals, roots and tubers, and so on. And a couple of the key items that you'll see here, there are important increases for fruits and vegetables and animal products, especially in the developing world, while at the same time there are concerning trends with oils and sugar consumption, which are very important in terms of health questions that are going on right now. So how do we deal with modeling food system innovation in the impact model? We define innovation as very broadly, could be policy changes, productivity advances, or even new commodities, as might be the case with our alternative seafoods as we're discussing today. One example that'll help us to think a little bit about how we might do a new commodity within the impact model. Back in 2006, if you recall, biofuels were a big topic that were a concern for many people because of the competition for resources, perceived competition for food, for example, and a few other details. This was presented itself as a clear case for something that would be important to include in the impact model. And so it was purely policy driven. There were many places, for example, in the United States, they wanted 25% of transportation fuels to become biofuels by 2025. Many other countries had similar types of policy documents on the books. There were also known technologies to produce ethanol and biodiesel, sugar and maize for ethanol and oilseed for biodiesel, for example. We knew what went in and we knew what came out. And then there was also a theoretical approach that might be a little more applicable to what we're talking about today. Cellulosic ethanol, while it existed, it was expensive, inefficient, and not very practical. It continues to be that way today. But it could have changed and become a much more viable technology. The scenarios that we looked at to inform these analyses, we start out with a straightforward one that just followed policy specifications. What would happen if we met the 25% by 2025 mark? Or there's also the possibility that it would skyrocket, and then there would be much more interest and prices of crude oil would change, and that would be another type of technology. And then there was a third one that just more speculative. What would happen if third generation technology came on much quicker than we had anticipated? So think of algae production of biofuels. That would have been that was an interesting question to consider at that point in time, although we know that it hasn't realized itself in any practical way yet. So thinking through what would happen for alternative seafood in terms of introducing a new commodity, we need to know what the current projections for demand and production are for conventional seafood going out into the future. Tinyi will talk about this in just a minute. And then what will the alternative seafoods displace? Which species? How much? Where's this going to happen? Both on the both the production side and the demand side. Who's going to be eating it? And by when? And these are some important considerations in terms of adoption curves. Some examples, theoretical examples shown here. In South Asia, are we going to see a 5% displacement, 10%, 40% maybe if it jakes off, or not? It's a good question. We need to know what goes into the process. Where is it coming from? Are we dealing with a bioreactor that needs nutrients? We need to know what those nutrients are. Or are we dealing with more of a vegetable protein base? We still need to consider where the mushrooms are coming from or where the soy protein is coming from. And then what comes out? We have to know both sides of the equation. And then there's also the many other questions that I'm sure we'll discuss today. Livelihoods, very important in the fish sector around the world. Are we displacing things or are we augmenting things, and what is going on in that dimension? And then of course there's probably what motivates most of the alternative seafood at the moment. What are the environmental impacts? Are we able to make any improvements in that dimension? And I will stop there. Thank you very much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm Chinyi, scientist of Foresight Modeling, based in WorldFish headquarters, Penang, Malaysia. This presentation is the second part of the Foresight Modeling research after IFPRI presentation of overview of the impact model. Today, I would like to briefly present the prospects of future alternative seafood market. The presentation will start with a quick introduction of impact fish model, then to show the past trends using the FAO historical data and future trends using impact fish model analysis of global and regional seafood consumption. Then followed by a post-model analysis to estimate the future potential of alternative seafood market share in North America, Europe, and Asia. Finally, I would like to discuss the next steps of moving forward of Foresight modeling exercise in the future. The impact fish model was first developed by WorldFish and IFPRI in 2003 to produce projections of global and regional fish production, consumption, and trade from 1997 to 2020. About 10 years after the publication of Fish to 2020 report, a follow-up study was commissioned by World Bank in collaboration with the impact modeling team at IFPRI, FAO, and University of Arkansas to create the Fish to 2030 report. In 2015, IFPRI delivered the fish module to WorldFish, and we collaboratively to update and calibrate the model to publish Fish to 2050 in the ASEAN region in 2017. Using the latest FAO dataset, let's look at the past global and regional fish consumption status. Globally, fish consumption reached 142 million metric tons in 2013. Among the 4 regions presented in this figure, Asia has the highest fish demand of 100 million metric tons, which is about 70% of the global seafood market, followed by Europe 11%, Africa 8%, and North America 5%. North America and Africa started with almost same level of fish consumption since year 2000. However, Africa surpassed North America in 2007 onwards. Using the impact fish model, the future projections of fish demand to 2030 are shown in this dotted lines in this figure. By 2030, global fish consumption is likely to reach at around 179 million metric tons, which will increase about 36 million metric tons as compared to year 2013. Asia continued to be the leading fish consuming region in the world. Africa not only surpassed North America, but also likely to consume as much fish as in Europe by 2030. Overall, total fish consumption increased in different growth rates in all the regions by 2030. This is mainly driven by increasing income and the surging population, particularly Africa. The annual population growth is more than double compared to the global growth. By conducting post-model analysis using impact fish model, this slide presents the future alternative seafood, which consists of plant-based and cell-based global market share by 2030, with the assumption that the plant-based alternative seafood will share 0.2% and the cell-based seafood will share 2.5% of global seafood market, with uneven distribution in more developed region, which is about 40% will consume in North America, 30% in Europe, and 30% in Asia. The table listed the regional plant-based and cell-based seafood consumption in 2030. Within these three regions, North America, Europe, and Asia, about 357,000 million tons will be consumed, which is on average 59 grams per person per year in 2030. Similarly, higher cell-based consumption is expected. About 4.5 million tons will be consumed, with about 733 grams per person per year in 2030. The previous slide's preliminary estimations are based on post-model analysis. In order to conduct the future foresight modeling research on alternative seafood, we may need to collect historical and more disaggregated data of production, consumption, trade prices, inputs, nutrient content of alternative seafood products. Also, understanding the potential future of consumer preferences on alternative seafood versus the traditional seafood is very important. Finally, we need to conduct a stakeholder consultation workshop to explore alternative scenarios and quantitative parameters for alternative seafood. Thank you very much for your attention.